I'm standing in front of Victory Outreach right here in Los Angeles, California. This ministry was started over 24 years ago by Pastor Sonny Arganzoni. It was started to reach the hardcore drug addict and gang member right here in Los Angeles. And since then, over 125 Victory homes have been started internationally, reaching out to the alcoholic, the gang member, and the drug addict.
Well, I was, like you said, I was raised in New York City, and I was a hardcore heroin addict I was in and out of all the prisons 10 times, and it was through the ministry of David Wilkerson. I was the first drug addict that David reached in the streets of New York City. And when I first met him, I thought he was an undercover narcotic agent, but then later on I found out he was a preacher, and then he took me, I went into the center in Brooklyn. And that's where, in a miraculous way, I met Nicky Cruz, and Nicky challenged me, and he told me to go into a room with him, that he was going to stay there with me and pray with me for God to deliver me totally and completely. And in that room, in a miraculous way, the Lord just set me free.
But thousands are not free from the death grip of drug addiction. 6 of 10 high school seniors have smoked marijuana, and over 60% of 7th graders feel extreme pressure to experiment with drugs. 1 of every 100 Americans is now a weekly cocaine user, with 2 to 3 million addicts. Nearly 700 people died of cocaine abuse last year, and crack is now used in 75% of high schools in the United States. 90% of all teenagers arrested for criminal activity have a drug problem.
I first started selling drugs when I was about 8, and that's when I first started running around with one of the many gangs that used to run in the streets of New York. And my eventual selling got to the point where we started battling rival gangs for control over territory, and I ended up shooting down 2 gang members and 1 cop when I was 13, of which I was tried and convicted for murder 1.
By the age of 13, I was already using heroin, and by the time I was 16, I was already strung out and doing all kinds of things, and burglaries and robberies, and trying to get my next fix.
Well, I've been watching my father take him and caught him a few times when shooting up, and got curious.
Your dad was shooting up?
Yeah.
Heroin or?
Heroin, yeah.
And so what kind of drugs did you start taking?
Marijuana, and then speed, and then my biggest drug was coke.
They can say whatever they want. When you're high, you feel better than you have in your whole life. But the worst part is that you may feel better than you ever have in your life, but when you come down, you feel worse than you ever have, and you feel so sick, and you just lay there. You can't get up, and you just think it's over, and I don't care. I want to die.
The truth is, drugs is big money. Just ask the few dealers who are able to buy the nice cars and carry a wad of $100 bills in their pocket everywhere they go. Tainted dollars course through the nation's banking arteries like a polluted stream. In fact, the physical connection between money and drugs is so pervasive that virtually every U.S. dollar bill recently tested bore microscopic traces of cocaine.
I had got to the point where I would steal, sell my body, and everything else just to supply my habit.
For instance, we have the Colombian connection, and many of these Colombians come in and they smuggle the drugs into the areas like the ghettos of the United States.
The truth is, there is a lot of money in drugs. Talk a little bit about the money and how it's had an influence on the drug spread in the United States.
Many of these kids now are actually selling drugs. Many of the kids that are now in gangs, they have territories, and those kids control a certain territory. And you see those guys that are selling the coke and selling the heroin. Many of them are driving Mercedes, brand new Mercedes, and making thousands of dollars a week.
At 8 years old, who would you be selling drugs to?
I used to sell drugs in school.
In school? Elementary school?
Elementary school, selling drugs.
To friends that were also at 8 and 9 years old?
Exactly, who were already drug addicts.
You know, selling drugs is almost as lucrative a business as selling cars is. In fact, on the street, an ounce of pot will go for $100, and a vial of cocaine will go for $25. In fact, last year, the drug revenues across America was estimated at about $100 billion, second only to the largest corporation in the United States, General Motors.
When I got into cocaine, I never thought I would be addicted, but I did. I became very addicted. I started robbing my parents, started robbing my relatives, uncles, aunts, started going to the streets and robbing people just for that high of cocaine.
They said, well, man, what do I need? Look, I'm making it great. Look how much money, look at me, look at my car, look at the house that I have, and look at the money that I'm making. But eventually, that doesn't bring happiness. And that's where we're able to get them. Towards the end, when they start recognizing, man, it's a dog-eat-dog world, and even though I have the money and I have the brand new car, there's still an emptiness inside of me.
Until that night that I tried taking my life once again. And that night, I cried out to God that if He was for real, to deliver me from that addiction, that if He was that He really could do those miracles that people say, to take that hurt away from me. And from that night on, I've been a living testimony. I haven't touched drugs, I haven't smoked, and it took away an addiction of 5 years that nobody else could do it, but Jesus did.